The stack of 60 Starlink satellites is safely enclosed inside of the 17-foot diameter payload fairing, which you can see there, that pointed cone at the very top of the rocket. This protects the satellites from aerothermal heating, aerodynamic loads, and contamination during ascent. Once we reach the vacuum of space, we will jettison the fairing as the second stage continues on its journey to orbit. We won't be attempting to catch the fairing halves in our nets today, as our boat and fairing software are undergoing upgrades, but weather permitting, we will try to recover them from the water using our recovery ships Miss Tree and Miss Chief. And there's a live view from one of those ships. So as you can see, the water is looking a little rough, so stay tuned. Now, if you've been tracking the lead up to today's launch, you know that the weather has been a watch item for the last several days, with tornado warnings moving through the area. Our rocket and payload, however, were in the hangar as the storm passed, so we didn't see any adverse impacts as a result of that weather. And today, it's looking like a beautiful day for a launch. So with that, the vehicles, satellites, weather, and range are all looking good for an on-time liftoff just a few minutes from now. As I mentioned at the top of the webcast, SpaceX and NASA are now targeting May 27 for Falcon 9's launch of Crew Dragon's second demonstration mission, or Demo 2 as we like to call it. This will be the first time that a commercially built spacecraft will launch people to the space station, and the first time in nearly 10 years that the U.S. has launched astronauts into space from U.S. soil. Demo 2 is an end-to-end flight test from launch to docking to splashdown. And it is the final major milestone for SpaceX's human spaceflight system to be certified for NASA for operational crew missions to and from the International Space Station. Bob Behnken and Doug Hurley will be the first two NASA astronauts to fly aboard Crew Dragon after completing countless hours of training, both at SpaceX and at NASA's training facilities. Both the spacecraft and the launch vehicle are at the Cape and undergoing preparations. And as you may have seen on social, Falcon 9 is getting a special paint job for the Demo 2 mission. That's right, NASA has brought back the famous worm logo. As you can see the logo painted on the Demo 2 Falcon 9 booster in this picture. The worm was brought back to mark the return of human spaceflight on American rockets from American soil with the Demo 2 mission. Once Demo 2 is complete, and the SpaceX and NASA teams have reviewed all the data for certification, NASA astronauts Victor Glover, Mike Hopkins, Shannon Walker, and Jackson astronaut Soichi Naguchi have been assigned to fly on Dragon's first 6-month operational mission, which we are calling Crew 1 and are targeting for later this year. So we are currently just over 4 minutes away from liftoff, and Falcon 9 is moving into the final stages of the countdown. The first and second stages are nearly fully loaded with 1 million pounds of kerosene fuel and liquid oxygen. It's a clear, beautiful, gorgeous day out there. It's a clear, beautiful, gorgeous day out there. The first stage should finish prop loading at T-3 minutes, and the second stage at T-2 minutes. And as I mentioned earlier, liquid oxygen is going to continue to top off up until just before liftoff. At T-60 seconds, be sure to listen for the call out that Falcon 9 is in startup. That means that the rocket's autonomous internal flight computers have taken over the launch countdown. The Starlink payload continues to be healthy. The Falcon 9 team is tracking no issues on the rocket. Weather is looking really good, and the range is green for launch. So with all that, let's just sit back and listen in to the last few minutes of the countdown.
Stage 2 lock sword is closed out. Falcon 9 is startup.
LDs go for launch.
T-minus 30 seconds. T-minus 15 seconds. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Ignition. Liftoff.
Falcon 9 switching down range.
Stage 1 propulsion is nominal.
Power and telemetry nominal.
As you can see, Falcon 9 has had a successful liftoff from pad 39A. Moments ago, we throttled the engines down and we'll throttle back up just in a second for preparation for Max Q. Max Q stands for maximum aerodynamic pressure, which are the highest stresses that the vehicle will see during ascent.
Maximum aerodynamic pressure.
Now coming up in about a minute, we will have 3 events happening back to back. First is main engine cutoff, or MECO. This is where all 9 M1D engines will shut off to slow the vehicle down in preparation for the second event, which is stage separation. This is where the second stage will separate from the first stage, with stage 1 making its way back down to Earth for landing, and stage 2 kicking off that third event that I mentioned, which is SES1, or second engine start 1. This is where the MVAC engine will light up and propel the second stage along with the Starlink satellites to orbit. Expecting MECO to occur in about 30 seconds.
MECO.
Stage separation confirmed.
Successful MECO. Successful stage sep. And it appears we have reignited or ignited that second stage engine for SES1. Now we're just a few seconds from fairing deploy. Again, this fairing has flown before on a previous mission. Grid fins are opening up.
Fairing separation confirmed.
And we have fairing separation. We have successfully reused this fairing. And now those halves are making their way back down to the sea, where hopefully we can scoop them up. So on the left side of your screen, you have stage 1, which is making its way down to the drone ship. And on the right, you have stage 2, that MVAC engine burning with 250,000 pounds of thrust. The grid fins appear to be fully deployed at this point. Now, while stage 2 continues on with the primary mission, stage 1's got its own plans. It's going to execute 2 burns prior to landing. The first is the entry burn. That's where we will reignite 3 of the M1D engines, which will help slow the stage down as it re-enters the upper part of the Earth's atmosphere. Shortly thereafter, we'll have a second burn, which we call the landing burn. This is a single engine burn that brings the vehicle's velocity down rapidly in order to land safely on the drone ship. At the same time, during that burn, you'll see the landing legs that are currently folded up along the side of the rocket are going to deploy. MVAC is looking good right now. It looks a little overexposed on that image there, but we can still see the plume coming out, and we're still hearing good data. So while we're 2 minutes away
Stage
from
2 is
entry
on a nominal
burn,
trajectory.
just a note on these Starlink satellites, these 60 will be joining the constellation that's already on orbit. As we mentioned, we've launched more than 360 satellites. And again, these are to provide high-speed, low-latency internet to people down on that globe that you see on the right side of your screen. The MVAC engine on stage 2 is at full power and on a nominal trajectory. Now, as stage 1 is making its way down, again, there are no engines burning while it's doing this. It's basically coasting using the grid fins to steer, and you can see those white puffs occasionally. That's cold nitrogen gas that is being used for attitude control, part of our ACS system, or attitude control system. That entry burn should be coming up here in about 15 seconds. Meanwhile, stage 2 continues on as planned.
Stage 1 entry burn startup.
Stage 1 FTS is safe.
This burn goes for about 20 seconds. Four engines burning at once right
Stage
now.
2 continues to follow a nominal trajectory.
Stage 1 entry burn shutdown.
All right, successful shutdown of that entry burn. Meanwhile, stage 2 is looking great. All right, full screen shine here. There we go. Now this burn on stage 2 is going to continue up until you hear the call out of SECO 1, or second engine cutoff 1. You're going to hear that pretty quickly after landing.
Stage 1 entry transonic.
All All right, impact D is beginning to throttle down, getting ready for that second engine cutoff.
Stage 1, landing burn, startup.
Entering terminal guidance.
All right, that landing burn has started. Let's see if we can see the plume in the view from the drone ship.
Stage 1, landing leg deploy.
Stage 2 FTS is safe.
There it is. Let's see. We have cheers. We have a rocket. Awesome. This is the 4th landing for this booster. And as you can hear, everybody here is super stoked to see it there. It's great. It's a gorgeous day. Gorgeous rocket. All right. And we have second engine cutoff on stage 2. And we are in a good orbit as well.
Nominal orbital insertion.
All right, so now stage 2 is going to coast in this orbit for a few minutes, and during this time, the stage will actually start to spin around its central axis, which gives the Starlink satellites the momentum that they need in order to space themselves out over time after they deploy. We're going to take a quick break and come back here at T plus 14 minutes.
Payload spin up.
Welcome back to the webcast
LOS
for
Bermuda
Starlink.
expected.
So far, we have had a successful mission thus far. We've had it at stage 1, ascent and landing, and stage 2 got the Starlink satellites into a good orbit and is now coasting and getting ready for deployment of those Starlink satellites. So we're going to listen in for the call out. It should come in about 30 seconds or so. We won't be able to see that right at that moment. We'll cut to the shot of the satellites deploying a little bit later, but in about 20 seconds we should hear the call out.
Payload deploy confirmed.
Okay, we just heard the call out for payload deploy. Now, as the satellites begin to separate over time, they're going to open up their solar array, and over the next, oh, there they go. All right, that's those 60 Starlink satellites. Look at that cool glow around them. Wow. Now, shortly after, as I was saying, after just coming up in the next, few hours or so, we're going to see the solar arrays deploy. And over the next days and weeks, the satellites will begin to distance themselves away from one another and use their onboard ion thrusters to make their way to their operational orbit of 550 kilometers. Sorry, that image just is always so beautiful and catches me each time. Now, with that, it brings our webcast to a close. We'd like to thank the 45th Space Wing for providing range safety today and the FAA for licensing today's launch. You can follow our website and social media platforms for updates on our next missions and milestones. So until next time, be well, and we'll see you next launch.
Payload spin up.